I, 26 female, grew up in suburban Phoenix with my older sister Isabel, 29 female, and our mother Carmen. Dad left when I was 12, leaving mom to raise two girls on a dental hygienist's salary. Money was always tight, but we managed. What I didn't manage was living up to Isabel's impossible standards. Isabel was the golden child from day one. Valedictorian, full scholarship to Northwestern, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance. By 25, she was pulling in six figures at Goldman Sachs, living in a sleek Chicago high-rise, driving a BMW, and dating a surgeon named Preston who looked like he'd stepped out of a medical drama. Meanwhile, I was the family disappointment. I dropped out of Arizona State after 2 years, not because I was failing, but because I couldn't afford to continue even with financial aid and my part-time job at Target. The student loans were piling up, and I was drowning. So I moved back home, got a full-time job at a local marketing agency, making $28,000 a year, and tried to figure out my next move. Isabel never let me forget how I'd given up. Every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call somehow became an opportunity for her to remind me of my failures. When I got promoted to junior account coordinator, she said, "That's nice, but when are you going back to school?" When I started freelancing on weekends to pay down my debt faster, she said, "Side hustles aren't real careers, Sophia." The worst part? Mom never defended me. She'd just nod along with whatever Isabel said, like my older sister's opinion was gospel. I understood it, in a way. Isabel was successful, sending mom money every month, visiting with expensive gifts. I was just the daughter who'd moved back home and was figuring things out. The breaking point came on a suffocating July evening in 2019. Isabel was visiting for mom's birthday, and we were sitting on the back patio after dinner. I'd just told them about a potential promotion, assistant marketing manager, which would bump my salary to $38,000. I was excited. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving forward. "That's great, honey," Mom said, but her tone was flat, distracted. Isabel set down her wine glass and looked at me with that expression I knew too well, part pity, part condescension, all superiority. "Sophia, can I be honest with you?" I should have said no. I should have excused myself and gone inside. But I nodded, because some part of me still craved her approval. "You're 26 years old, living at home, making barely enough to cover your student loans. This promotion you're excited about? It's still less than I made my first year out of college. You dropped out of school, you work at some tiny agency nobody's heard of, and you're celebrating crumbs." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "I'm working my way up. Everyone starts somewhere." She laughed, not a mean laugh, somehow worse. A dismissive one. "Sophia, you're not working your way up. You're spinning your wheels. Look around. Do you see any senior marketing people who started where you are? Do you think you're going to magically stumble into success?" I looked at Mom, waiting for her to say something. Anything. Instead, she was studying her hands. "The truth is," Isabel continued, "you don't have what it takes for real success. You're not strategic enough, you're not ambitious enough, and you give up too easily. College was your chance, and you blew it. Now you're just existing." The words hit like physical blows, but she wasn't done. "I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because someone needs to be realistic with you. You'll probably work at that agency for another 10 years, maybe make $45,000 eventually. You'll meet some guy, settle down, have kids, and that'll be your life. And that's fine. Not everyone can be exceptional. Most people are just ordinary." She took a sip of wine, as casual as discussing the weather. "But please stop talking about your career like it's going somewhere impressive. It's embarrassing." I turned to Mom, my eyes burning. "Are you going to say anything?" Mom finally looked up, and for a moment I thought she might defend me. Instead, she sighed and nodded slowly. "Isabel has a point, Mija. You've been struggling for years. Maybe it's time to be more realistic about your expectations." And there it was. My own mother, nodding along with my sister's character assassination, agreeing that I was ordinary, that my dreams were embarrassing, that I should accept mediocrity as my ceiling. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the concrete. "I need some air." "Sophia, don't be dramatic," Isabel called after me. "I'm trying to help you." I went to my room, my childhood room with its faded purple walls and participation trophies, and sat on my bed, shaking with rage and humiliation. Was she right? Was I delusional? Was I just ordinary? Then I caught sight of something tucked behind my mirror, a business card from a networking event I'd attended 6 months earlier. Miranda Walsh, Senior Vice President at Catalyst Digital Marketing in New York. We'd talked for maybe 10 minutes, but she'd been impressed by my ideas about social media strategy for B2B companies. She'd said, "If you're ever in New York, look me up." I pulled out my laptop and started typing an email. "Dear Miranda, we met at the Phoenix Marketing Conference in January. I'm ready to take the next step in my career and would love to discuss potential opportunities at Catalyst Digital." I hit send before I could lose my nerve. Then I started researching one-way flights to JFK. 3 days later, I was on a Greyhound bus to New York with one suitcase, $247 in my checking account, and a burning desire to prove my sister wrong. Moving to New York with no job, no apartment, and barely enough money for a Metro card wasn't brave, it was desperate. But sometimes desperation is the only thing powerful enough to overcome inertia. Miranda responded to my email within 12 hours. "Great timing. We're expanding our social media strategy team. Can you be here for an interview next week?" The interview lasted 3 hours. They had me present strategy proposals, analyze their competitors' campaigns, and meet with 4 different department heads. By the end, I was exhausted but exhilarated. This was the kind of work I'd been dreaming about. High stakes, fast-paced, with real impact on real businesses. Miranda offered me the position that afternoon. Social media strategist, $52,000 base salary plus performance bonuses. It wasn't a fortune, but it was $14,000 more than I'd ever made. Finding an apartment in my budget was like searching for unicorns. I ended up in a 400-square-foot studio in Queens for $1,800 a month. Goodbye. Entire paycheck, but it was mine. I bought a mattress on Amazon, a small desk from IKEA, and called it home. The work was intense. 10-hour days were normal. Client presentations could make or break campaigns, and everyone moved like their hair was on fire. I loved every second of it. Catalyst Digital was everything I'd hoped for and more demanding than I'd imagined. We handled social media strategies for major brands, tech startups, fashion companies, financial services firms. The pressure was constant, but so was the learning curve. I threw myself into the work with single-minded focus. Every campaign was a chance to prove myself. Every client presentation was an opportunity to show I belonged here. Within 2 months, I'd increased engagement rates for my first major client by 180%. Within 4 months, I'd landed 2 new accounts worth $150,000 combined. My coworkers started taking notice. Miranda began assigning me bigger clients, more responsibility. The junior strategist who'd started the same week as me was still handling small local businesses. I was presenting to Fortune 500 CMOs. During this entire time, I barely spoke to my family. Isabel sent the occasional text, "How's the big city treating you?" with that subtle condescension she couldn't quite hide. Mom called every few weeks, usually to tell me about Isabel's latest achievement or to ask when I was coming home for a visit. When they asked about my job, I kept my answers vague. "It's going well. Busy." Let them think I was still struggling. Let them maintain their assumptions about their ordinary daughter who'd never amount to anything. I had work to do. My first-year performance review was a revelation. Miranda sat across from me in her corner office, my portfolio spread across her glass desk. "Sophia, in 15 years of managing teams, I've never seen someone adapt this quickly to high-level client work. Your strategic thinking is sophisticated, your execution is flawless, and your results speak for themselves." She slid a folder across the desk. "We're promoting you to senior social media strategist, effective immediately. Your new salary is $68,000, plus a bonus structure that could add another $20,000 annually." I walked out of that meeting feeling lighter than air. For the first time since leaving Phoenix, I allowed myself to imagine what success might actually look like. By month 18, I was managing a team of 3 junior strategists and handling Catalyst's highest value accounts. My salary had jumped to $85,000, and the bonuses were putting me well into 6-figure territory. I'd moved to a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn Heights with actual counter space and a view of the Manhattan skyline. But the real breakthrough came when I pitched an idea that everyone else thought was ambitious to the point of crazy. I noticed that most agencies were still treating social media as an add-on service, something to complement traditional advertising campaigns. But I saw something bigger. Social media wasn't just a marketing channel anymore. It was becoming the primary way people discovered and engaged with brands. Companies needed dedicated social media strategies, not afterthoughts. I spent 3 months developing a comprehensive proposal for a new service line, integrated social media consulting that would position Catalyst as specialists rather than generalists. I researched competitors, analyzed market gaps, projected revenue potential, and created detailed implementation timelines. When I presented it to the executive team, the room went quiet. Then Miranda smiled. "Sophia, this is brilliant, and I want you to lead it." That's how I became Director of Social Innovation at 28, with a salary of $125,000 in equity in the company. For the first time in my life, I was building something from scratch, assembling a team, developing processes, creating the framework for what would become Catalyst's most profitable division. The new division launched 6 months later, and the results were immediate. Within 90 days, we'd signed contracts worth over $1.8 million. Major brands were flying me to their headquarters for strategy sessions. Industry publications were writing about our innovative approach. I was working 18-hour days, traveling constantly, and absolutely thriving in the chaos. Every success felt like another nail in the coffin of Isabel's certainty that I'd never amount to anything. But success has a way of creating bigger opportunities. TechCrunch had been watching our growth, and when they decided to expand their media portfolio with strategic acquisitions, they approached us with an offer that would change everything. The negotiations took for months. Lawyers, due diligence, market valuations, earn-out clauses. It was like learning a new language. But when we finally closed the deal, the numbers were staggering. $47 million for what was now called Nexus Social Strategies. My 15% equity stake meant I walked away with $7.05 million. I was 31 years old and officially a millionaire. The money was surreal, but what felt even better was the recognition. Harvard Business School invited me to guest lecture about scaling digital marketing companies. Adweek named me to their 40 Under 40 list. The Wall Street Journal ran a profile titled "From Phoenix to Fortune: The Social Media Strategist Redefining Digital Marketing." Through all of this, I still hadn't told my family the full scope of what I'd accomplished. They knew I'd been promoted several times, and that work was going well, but I'd been deliberately vague about details. Isabel still assumed I was working at some agency, probably making decent money, but nothing spectacular. The reckoning was coming, though. I could feel it. Update, 2 weeks later. The confrontation I'd been unconsciously preparing for came sooner than expected, and in the most mundane way possible. I was in Phoenix for what was supposed to be a quick weekend visit. Mom had been asking me to come home for months, and I finally had a break between client presentations. Isabel happened to be visiting at the same time, which should have been my first warning that the universe was setting something in motion. We were having lunch at Mom's kitchen table, the same one where I'd eaten countless childhood meals and received just as many lectures about being more like my successful older sister. Isabel was in full form, regaling us with stories about her latest promotion to senior director and the raise that came with it. "Preston and I are looking at houses in Lincoln Park now," she said, scrolling through real estate photos on her phone. "Nothing crazy, just something in the $800,000 range. The market's insane, but with both our salaries we can manage it." Mom made appropriately impressed noises. I kept eating my sandwich, half listening to the familiar soundtrack of Isabel's achievements. "What about you, Sophia?" Isabel turned to me with that look I knew too well. "Still at that little agency? How's that going?" "It's fine," I said, the automatic response I'd been giving for 3 years. "Just fine." She raised an eyebrow. "Come on, you must have gotten some promotions by now. What are you making these days?" I could have deflected, could have changed the subject, could have given another vague non-answer. Instead, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was seeing Mom's expectant expression, waiting for me to confirm once again that I was the underachieving daughter. Maybe it was Isabel's casual condescension, the way she asked about my salary like she was asking about the weather. Maybe I was just tired of hiding. "Actually, I'm not at an agency anymore," I said, setting down my sandwich. "I run my own company now. Nexus Social Strategies." "Your own company?" Mom's eyes widened. "Since when?" "Since we got acquired by TechCrunch 8 months ago." The kitchen went very quiet. "Acquired?" Isabel's voice had a strange quality to it. "What do you mean, acquired?" TechCrunch bought us for $47 million. Isabel's phone clattered onto the table. Mom's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. 47 million, Mom whispered. My equity stake was 15%, I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. So after taxes, I netted about 6.2 million. The silence stretched so long I could hear the neighbor's dog barking 3 houses down. Isabel was staring at me like I'd just announced I was an alien. You're saying you're a millionaire? Several times over. Mom set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. Mija, why didn't you tell us? The question I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. I looked at both of them. My mother, who'd nodded along when Isabel called me ordinary, and my sister, who'd dismissed my dreams as embarrassing. Because I didn't need you to believe in me anymore, I said simply. For years, I was told I wasn't strategic enough, wasn't ambitious enough, that I'd never amount to anything. So I decided to prove it to myself instead of trying to prove it to you. Isabel's face had gone pale. I never said you'd never amount to anything. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the voice memo I'd recorded that night 3 years ago, the night that changed everything. I'd been so hurt by her words that I'd wanted to preserve them, to remember exactly how it felt to be dismissed so completely. Would you like me to play it back for you? Play what back? I hit play, and her own voice filled the kitchen. You don't have what it takes for real success. You're not strategic enough, you're not ambitious enough, and you give up too easily. Most people are just ordinary. Please stop talking about your career like it's going somewhere impressive. It's embarrassing. When the recording ended, Isabel looked like she'd been slapped. Mom was crying quietly. I don't remember saying that, Isabel whispered. I remember every word, I said. Because that was the night I realized I had 2 choices, prove you wrong or accept that you were right. So I chose to prove you wrong. The rest of the weekend was awkward in ways I hadn't anticipated. Isabel barely spoke to me, spending most of her time on work calls or claiming she had emails to catch up on. Mom kept apologizing, tears in her eyes every time she looked at me. I should have defended you, she said over and over. I should have been proud of your dreams instead of discouraging them. You weren't discouraging them, Mom. You were just scared. I understand that now. But understanding and forgiving aren't the same thing, and we all knew it. When I left Sunday evening, Isabel was standing in the driveway beside her BMW, finally ready to have the conversation we'd been avoiding all weekend. I'm sorry, she said, her voice small. I was wrong about everything. About you, about your potential, about what success looks like. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I think I was jealous, she continued. Jealous of how brave you were, how willing you were to take risks. I've spent my whole life following a script someone else wrote, checking boxes other people created. You wrote your own script, and I couldn't understand it. So you tried to rewrite it for me, I said. Yes, and I was wrong. We hugged briefly, awkwardly. It would take time to rebuild what had been broken, if it could be rebuilt at all. Flying back to New York that night, I felt something shift inside me. For 3 years, I'd been driven by spite, by the need to prove my sister wrong. But sitting in that first-class seat I could now easily afford, looking down at the lights of cities passing below, I realized I didn't need that motivation anymore. I'd proven everything I needed to prove. Now I could just be successful for its own sake. Update, 3 months later. The most unexpected development in all of this wasn't my family's reaction to my success. It was what happened after the shock wore off. Isabel called me on a Tuesday evening in March, 3 months after our kitchen confrontation. I was in my apartment, reviewing proposals for Nexus's expansion into European markets, when her name appeared on my phone. Hey, she said, her voice tentative in a way I'd never heard before. Hey yourself, how's the house hunting going? Actually, that's what I'm calling about. Preston and we broke up. I set down my laptop, surprised. What happened? He said I'd been different since Thanksgiving. More introspective, less sure about things. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Apparently, questioning your life choices isn't attractive in a partner. I'm sorry, Isabel. Don't be. He was right. I have been different. Ever since I heard that recording, I've been thinking about what you said, about following scripts other people wrote for me. She paused, and I could hear traffic in the background. I hate my job, Sophia. I'm good at it. I make good money. But I wake up every day feeling like I'm sleepwalking through someone else's life. This was the most honest conversation we'd had in years, maybe ever. What would you rather be doing? That's the problem, I don't know. I've been so focused on checking boxes and meeting expectations that I never stopped to ask myself what I actually want. Over the next hour, we talked about dreams deferred, paths not taken, the difference between success and fulfillment. Isabel told me she'd been thinking about leaving finance entirely, maybe starting her own business in sustainable investing, combining her financial expertise with environmental causes she actually cared about. It would mean starting over at 34, she said. Taking a massive pay cut, not knowing if I'll succeed. Sounds familiar, I said with a smile she couldn't see. Would you? Could I maybe ask for your advice? About starting a company, finding investors, building something from scratch. It was the first time in our adult lives that Isabel had asked for my help with anything. The first time she'd acknowledged that I might know something she didn't. Of course, I said. But fair warning, I'm going to tell you the same thing you told me 3 years ago. Her voice got small. What? That it's going to be harder than you think. That you'll probably fail at least once before you succeed. That most people aren't cut out for entrepreneurship. Silence. The difference is, I continued, I believe you can do it anyway. That conversation marked the beginning of a new relationship between us. Isabel did leave Goldman Sachs 6 weeks later, using her savings to start Verde Capital, a sustainable investment firm focused on environmental and social impact. She's currently working out of a WeWork space in Chicago, bootstrapping with her own money, sleeping on friends' couches when client meetings run late. She calls me twice a week now for advice about everything from pitch deck design to investor negotiations to managing the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship. For the first time in our lives, our conversations feel like partnerships rather than competitions. Mom has visited me in New York 3 times since the revelation. She met my team, toured the Nexus offices, even attended one of my speaking engagements at Columbia Business School. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, Mija, she said afterward, tears in her eyes. But I'm grateful you proved me wrong. The irony isn't lost on me that my success has given my sister permission to chase her own dreams. The same dreams she might have been too scared to pursue if she hadn't seen me take the leap first. Last week, I received an email that brought everything full circle. A young woman named Sophia, who'd heard me speak at a conference in Phoenix. She was 24, working at a local agency for $32,000 a year, drowning in student loans, dreaming of bigger things but convinced she wasn't smart enough or talented enough to make it. Her family kept telling her to be realistic, to accept that not everyone was meant for great success. I wrote back immediately. Pack your bags and come to New York. We're hiring, and I think you have exactly what it takes. Today, I'm sitting in my corner office overlooking Central Park, preparing for a board meeting where we'll discuss Nexus's expansion into Asia. Forbes just included me in their self-made women under 35 list. Harvard Business School invited me to join their entrepreneurship advisory board. But the moment I'm most proud of happened last weekend, when Isabel called to tell me she'd just closed her first major client, a $2.5 million sustainable energy fund that will create jobs while reducing carbon emissions. I couldn't have done this without you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, you could have, I replied. You just needed to believe in yourself the way I believed in me. Sometimes the best revenge against people who don't believe in you is succeeding so completely that their disbelief becomes irrelevant. But even better than revenge is transformation, not just of yourself, but of everyone who thought they knew who you were supposed to be. The girl who was told she'd never amount to anything just signed a deal that will employ 200 people across 3 continents. The sister who said I wasn't ambitious enough is now sleeping on couches, chasing her own impossible dream with guidance from the little sister she once dismissed. And the mother who nodded along when I was called ordinary now tells everyone who'll listen about both her daughters. The one who built a company that changed an industry, and the one who walked away from a 6-figure salary to save the planet. Next month, I'm giving the keynote address at Arizona State's Business School, the same university I dropped out of 7 years ago. The topic of my speech? Why being underestimated is your greatest advantage. Some stories end with revenge. Others end with forgiveness. The best ones end with transformation, and sometimes, if you're really lucky, they end with your former critic becoming your biggest supporter.